What's up, everybody? Welcome here to Half-Ass Pod. It's your boy Corn, as usual. And over here, ladies and gentlemen, we have not just the author, not just the editor, not just the illustrator, not just the creator, but the end-all, be-all, if not just Walter Paisley Cafe, but Spadell. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Platt. Mark, say what's up to the people, man.
Hey everybody, are you getting ready for Halloween? It's the early Halloween season. It's time to, start putting together your costume and getting your decorations ready. And it's a big deal. And we got Freddy versus Jason.
Yep. Speaking of Halloween, got ourselves a big battle here that we witnessed within the past 24 hours. Freddy versus Jason, ladies and gentlemen. Now you got Freddy Krueger and you got Jason Voorhees. Now we've been following Freddy for a couple months at this point, right, Mark? Throughout the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, or the Nightmare franchise, however you want to call it. And I got to tell you, like I've said it before, I've never seen any of those movies that we've reviewed. But this one, and Mark, you'll probably get mad at me, but this was the very first time I ever got introduced to Freddy Krueger. And I was a kid. I was 9 years old when this movie came out. And I remember watching it, and I was like, holy shit, I really like this character. Like, I really fucking love Freddy Krueger. But I also love Jason. It made me love Jason too. And this was my first introduction to Jason as well.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got introduced to both of these characters in this movie. So that tells you like the generation I came from, pretty much. Actually, no. I mean, it was, but I should have seen Jason X. I think Jason X came out before this, right?
The what?
Jason X came out before this, right?
Yes, it did. Yes, right before.
Okay,
this.
so yeah, I should have saw that one, but I blame myself for not seeing that one because I was old enough to watch Jason X. I just never did. But yes, this was my introduction to both characters. So I immediately fell in love with both characters, but never really cared to explore the previous movies of either characters until now. So yeah, it's crazy. But Mark, you saw this movie, and you told me that you watched it yesterday and today. So you've seen it twice in the past 24 hours. What was your first thought after watching the movie? And actually, as a matter of fact, what was your thought after watching the first one? And then watching it a second time, what was your thought after watching it?
Well, I mean, immediately, and it might be just because it parallels, or it comes after a rewatching of all the Freddy movies until this point. Visually stunning. Like, just the film seems so much more crisp. And it might just be the budget on this, but I mean, even compared to New Nightmare, which what was that 97, I believe. So okay, we're looking at like maybe
94.
90. Oh my gosh, even so we're looking at 9 years. Okay, yeah. So compared even to New Nightmare, yeah, there just seems to be but I mean, they had a good budget. So there, and they had a really good director. I didn't really know much about Ronnie Yu, but he did come out of the like Hong Kong cinema, and these directors, a lot of these directors, of course, we know John Woo, and Ang Lee, so
James
these directors. What's that?
James Wan.
Right, yeah. These directors are auteurs. And I think, Ronnie, you really brought a lot to it. I think the budget brought a lot to it. Yeah, I mean, of course, some of the CG wasn't all that great. It wasn't all believable. Especially that scene where, what's that one kid's name? The one that looks like Jason Mewes from the Clerks movies, the View universe, where he's swallowing
what that Reef or whatever his name was.
Oh yeah, it was it was something Berg, Freeberg or something like that, I think.
Oh yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the pothead kid, and
Yeah.
that was dressed pretty much like Jason Mewes. And yeah, he swallows Freddy Caterpillar, and that's where it's like, oh, okay, that's where you get your 2003 CGI,
Yeah. But
But
I can't completely shit on that though, because
no,
it was
no,
2000.
no. I mean,
That was the best.
because there was some,
Obviously.
but that must
Yeah.
have been a tough one because there are some CGI in this film that comes off convincing. But yeah, but
Oh yeah.
otherwise, I love the colors in this movie. I mean, just everything was a great choice. Like I said, it was so crisp, yet he was still able to like capture, mood and gloominess and things like this, with what would otherwise look pretty slick. I mean, this seems pretty slick for Freddy and Jason, and sometimes that can hurt. I mean, admittedly, and this is kind of a weird apples and oranges situation, but at some point when the hardcore punk rock bands that I listened to in the early to mid '80s, some of them went on to work for under better budgets with bigger record companies, and I didn't like them cleaner. I liked them better raw, but I think this really worked. I mean, if this was going to be the build up for Jason and Freddy, at least in that regard of like slickness, I think this one really worked out visually. So, and yeah, and the second watching of it today that I did, it just confirmed that, because I kept an even closer eye just because of the way it was so visually stunning to me that I wanted to take a second look so I could get some more details out of it.
So I mean I want to say, at least starting off with the director. I mean, he's coming off of this is the guy that came off of Bride of Chucky, and
Yeah.
I just found out he did Bride of Chucky, and I'm like, that would make total sense because the approach of this movie and Bride of Chucky, where they both have these really I mean, from the soundtracks to visually how they kill, the blood and guts and all that. So it's not too much of the guts and stuff that you're seeing when you compare both of those movies. It's more blood than anything, but it's more creative ways to kill people in terms of not creative ways to kill people, but creative ways to show how much brutalness is to the deaths in terms of like the blood. You always the blood splurting out and the wrists and out of feet and stuff, and that leads me to another thing too. Go back to which one was it? The second one, and Nightmare franchise, right? Where old dude was where you said you got squeamish because old dude got his feet got fucked up from underground when Freddy took what I'm talking about, those little tentacle things and put them into his feet.
Oh yeah.
They did it in this movie.
Yeah,
they did the same thing. And I thought that was a great callback. I thought that was an amazing call. Even though I thought of myself when I saw it, I was like, I bet Mark is freaking the fuck out right now. Because I remember you said it. That was that one scene, or it might have been Dream Warriors, where
Dream Warriors was the kid when his veins and arteries were being like ripped out of his arms, and he was being like he was being held up by like a marionette. So yeah, that definitely made me like, ooh, that gave me the willies.
But so you go to that scene. Here's what I'll say about this movie too. All right, so let me just go ahead and get this out of the way. The story, I thought was great. I really did. The action scenes between Freddy and Jason were great. But the dialogue, I even liked some of the characters, but the dialogue, man, the dialogue was so fucking bad. The dialogue was horrible. I mean, you go. I mean, starting out with this movie, you go from, I can't remember the chick's name. Gibb, right? Whatever her name was. the chick that was like always drunk.
Yeah, the one
so
that was
her-
always wearing the cap, the baseball cap.
Yeah, and like her and her boyfriend, like who? What makes me? Why would I feel bad for her boyfriend being killed? Like they made that dude like into like the most like stereotypical like asshole. I'm just like sitting there like, what made them think this was gonna fucking work? But I will say this. I will say this. The way that they killed Gib, the chick, where and then the dude that was on top of her, you know, sexually assaulting her, whatever he was doing, like the way that Jason killed him and took it away from Freddy. That's when because again, I haven't seen this movie in like at least 15 years. I have not touched this movie at all.
Oh wow, yeah.
So like some of these scenes are like I'm forgetting that they happened, and I'm understanding the logic and what the director was trying to do and what the writers were trying to do. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, the way because before watching this movie, my only memory of Freddy vs. Jason was, yes, it was a great movie. I loved it. But now I'm getting to watch it for the first time as an adult. Am I going to like it just as much as I did as a kid? Or am I going to sit there and I'm going to be like, none of this makes sense? But I got to tell you, it didn't happen. I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, there's a bit of logical issues, but we're talking about a horror movie. So, I mean, you can kind of throw most of that out the window.
Right, yeah.
But when it comes to actually, I mean, just like when they stood there and watched, how many times did we see characters stand there and watch someone else die and then run? And I'm thinking to myself, like, how does that make sense? Like, remember that kid, the one that looks like Miles Teller, the kid, the one that kept flirting with Lori.
Oh
like,
yeah,
guy?
All right, right, yeah, the milk toast, yeah.
Yeah. And Charlie, I think, or Linder, whatever, Linderman, I think she said his name was. But when he's in that little room where the sheriff gets electrocuted by Jason, dude's standing there with the gun, screaming for like 5 minutes, and then Jason lets go and he starts coming after him. Then the kid I'm thinking like, oh, he's gonna shoot him? Is he gonna shoot him? Nope, he just turns around and runs with the gun. And I'm just like, again, no fucking sense at all. At all.
Right.
I want to go to another scene too. And this scene, I gotta say, was actually one of the better scenes of this movie, where I was like, wow, this actually really kind of made me somewhat feel for the characters. And that's when Kelly Rowland, I can't remember her name in the movie. I'm sorry, I'm really terrible with names in movies. But the black chick, when her and Linderman,
Kia,
and Kia, and so you remember when Jason throws Linderman into the wall and he gets hit, like stabbed by that blade,
yeah,
or whatever that was, and then she sits him on a tree. I cannot tell you, man. I cannot tell you. There's something there. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something there that's got to be poetic about that. I don't know, but where he's sitting on a tree, and he's like, you know, I'll be right here. I'll be right. I'll be fine. Whatever. Because we've seen that happen, but I don't think we've seen it happen in a horror movie though. That's the thing.
Right.
But you know, she's like, you know, I'll come back, and you're thinking, okay, she's gonna come back, she's gonna help him. As soon as she leaves, the camera like zooms in on his face, and then he just lets go, and then it goes down, and you see the blood just pouring down like a fucking fountain. And I'm just like, bro, there's got to be something poetic about that. And the fact that like that's like a scene out of Red Dawn, and we saw it in Freddy versus Jason. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like haunting and heartbreaking at the same time, and it wasn't heartbreaking in like a hyperbolic way. It was just, you know, I mean, and what a performance too. You know, I mean, you know, the life drains out of him, but he doesn't close his eyes at the moment of his death. His eyes are still open, and you could see it. You could see where he's just looking off in the distance, and he's still alive at one point, but then you could just tell, you know, his life ended, you know, even though he barely did anything to indicate that. It was just so subtle. But
Yeah.
that was amazing.
I loved it, man. I fucking
Yeah.
loved it. That's one thing that I feel like the director did fucking amazing. I want to go to the fight scenes, man. I want to go to the fight scenes between Freddy and Jason. I feel like that's what everybody wants to hear, right? Look, those fight scenes, I was 100% fucking there for it, man. I ate it up, bro. I ate it up just as much as I did as a kid, man. Sitting there and watching fucking Freddy beat the shit. Because you never seen Jason take an L when it came to fist fight. When it came to hand combat, bro, you never saw Jason take an L. And even I'm sitting here and I'm forgetting who the fuck won the hand-to-hand. Bro, Freddy fucking brought it to Jason. That scene in the boiler room where he's just sitting there, and it's amazing because you would think, oh man, Robert Englund, all he has to do is just do this. But the story that they're fucking telling with it and what is happening to Jason as Freddy's just sitting there thrusting his hips and he's moving his, because everybody knows this is what Freddy does, bro. This is his fucking thing. Oh man, I mean, what do you think of those fight scenes, man?
Oh, well, it is kind of funny, how that went. I mean, I think all in all, Jason took the most licks. I mean, of course, anybody that's watched it knows how it came out. I mean, it was ambiguous, but it still looked like Jason won, except for the wink, But yeah, I mean, the scene in the what was it, the factory or the boiler room, whatever that was. Yeah, what a great set too. I mean, that was just so well done. Again, the colors were perfect, the lighting, everything, just fucking amazing. So and that was the one thing that I liked about this movie. Oh yeah, and I can't is that with Freddy, I think there was a really good balance of his dark side and his wisecracking side. There seemed to be both there in the film, and because his wisecracking side didn't come out at first, I don't recall him like hitting the ground wisecracking. I think that they started dark. I mean, of course, the movie starts out with Robert Englund, Freddy pre-burnt or whatever, and in the boiler room and everything. Giving the exposition, and then I guess you figure out that he's in hell, that's like, yeah, that's what happened with Jason too. But yeah, I mean, my whole point is that, there was something about the balance between his darkness and his wisecracking. And I don't know, I think that was some of his best wisecracks were in this film. I think one of them that really got me was when Laurie goes to the dream world, that goes to Jason's dream, and the camp counselors are screwing on the porch of that building.
Oh yeah,
and one turns around and says it was Freddy, and he says something like, "Oh, something about her." I don't know. And then the girl he's screwing is dead, and then he makes some crack. I said it was the funniest one, but the funny thing that really got me was when he picked her arm up and started waving it. So I don't know. That was just good. There's just a couple of really good
I think
LOL moments for me.
What's that? Fault. I think it said it's like something like, "It's not my fault. She's not good on her feet," or something like that. I can't remember what he said, but something like that. Yeah.
But as far as like their battles go, I mean, they build it up. They it's like it gained momentum. I mean, even after that boiler room scene where Freddy's using his dream world telekinesis all over Jason, when you think, wow, how much more brutal can it get? So by the time they get to the pier and the final battle, wow, what a battle. I mean, they're going mano a mano. They're tearing the hell out of each other. I mean, and they did not want us to know who was winning, because the second you thought somebody was winning, somebody else would get the upper hand. It's like the stakes kept rising and rising, and that was just exciting. And what a battle. I mean, that right there on that pier of all places, like one of the most simple sets, but it was like gory and brutal, and just everything fell into place just right.
And that's why I'm glad they never made a sequel, because, and I'm glad they've never done anything else like this ever again, because this was so special. And it's just like you don't want it to become like the next westerns or the next superhero movies where you start taking like iconic figure in, you know, in the action genre versus another iconic figure in the action. Like I hope, I'm glad they never actually did any of that shit, because this movie did it perfectly. You know, like you said, you didn't know who was going to fucking win. You didn't know that whether Jason was going to get the upper hand. You didn't know whether Freddy was going to have the upper hand, because whenever you thought one person was going to win, the other one came back with more. And again, poetic. To me, poetic. Now, obviously, this didn't happen in a poetic way, but I'm talking about in terms of the bigger picture, poetic. And storytelling, very poetic. Now, I got to get to a point that I did. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, going back to what you said, we're saying about dialogue, and then when you asked me my first impressions, was the visuals, and I think that the visuals and the storytelling with the visuals and the editing and everything, that was more important. You know, the dialogue. You know, I mean, yeah, a lot of it was crap, but there were moments when it was moving the plot along, but really what moved the plot along is what you saw, you know, not what you were told.
Yeah. Yep. And I gotta say this. I don't understand why they, and I know this might not make sense to people, but I don't understand why they had these characters besides Freddy and Jason in the second half of this fucking movie. I really don't. I don't get it. Because all it was at the end of the day, like, I understand you needed people to, like, you needed characters, other characters, you needed actual humans in order to make the story, you know, develop. But by the time you get to the point,
you need victims.
that's what I'm saying. Like you need humans, you need characters, because Freddy needs to get through to the kid, not to the kids, but to the. I guess they kind of were kids, right? They're grown ass adults.
Yeah,
but they were
well, you know, I don't know. Right? I mean, you know, you're talking to a 50-year-old man. You know, teenagers are kids to me. You
know. But you know, but you needed them. You needed the victims in order to obviously to develop Freddy, which I loved. I love that dynamic. But in the second half of this movie, by the time Freddy and Jason start fighting each other in that first fight in the boiler room, we don't need any more victims, I feel like. But I mean, again, I'm not complaining wholeheartedly, saying like you didn't completely, like they completely botched the second, like nothing like that. But I'm just like, it's just the Laurie chick. It just seemed like the second half of the movie is just like she just put everything together and just was like, oh yeah, like I'm just gonna do this. And it's just like no one in real life. Again, we're talking about horror movies, but I'm just thinking to myself, you're trying to make this seem at least somewhat realistic, maybe. No one's really gonna try and go after Freddy and Jason. Period. I mean, it's just not going to happen. But again, I'm nitpicking when it comes to that, obviously. But that's definitely one of my.
That's what we're here for, right?
Yeah, that's one of my bigger nitpicks. You know, is that we didn't really need the characters in the second half, but I get it. I want to go to our favorite parts of this movie, and Mark, I want to start out with you, and then I'll share mine. But in terms of your favorite part of this movie, your favorite scene, what was it?
Yeah, well, it was funny. I thought about that, during my viewing, and you already touched on one. Yeah, the death of Finderman, really good, and it was kind of funny too. This was just kind of almost like a throwaway thing, but I really liked the way it was done. It was Blake. He was the one that was the friend of the jerk guy. I forgot what his name, but he was the one that Kia and Gib were trying to encourage Laurie to hook up with because she was still holding a torch for Will. And so, yeah, so Blake was in his house and he has that talk with his dad where he says, "Yeah, my best friend just died. Why don't you give me some fucking space?" And then he has that I don't know, like a dream or something where he goes out in the yard and trying to look for something he heard, and then comes back to his dad sitting on the porch, and his dad's just sitting there staring, and then his head falls off. Yeah, I don't know, man. I really liked how that was done.
And he turns around.
Yeah. I mean, because he's just standing there, and there's no indication, but his head fell off, and it's like, yeah, well, it's Jason. Like that might be like, whoa, how the hell could that happen? But it's fucking Jason. I mean, you got to watch his movies to know that. Well, yeah, Jason's perfectly capable of doing something like that. That's just extremely Voorhees-esque, so yeah, just stuff like that. So yeah, there was just all these little things that I really liked too. In the climax, I just love that that Jason's final blow was to put Freddy's glove arm through the back of Freddy's torso. That was just a great moment, where he just really his last lick. I mean, because it was between the two of them, and Jason was the one who ended up like in the water, and then his final blow, and then he just falls into the water. But yeah, so that was just little things like that were really good. From like, so those are just a few examples of my favorite parts.
I remember, I'll say this one as a side note. I remember when I was a kid and I saw the trailer, and I remember Freddy. I remember that visual, that awesome visual. It probably looks like crap now, I guess, to a lot of people, but I still enjoy it. Where he jumps out of the water, and he's like with like kind of like a fucking like Super Saiyan. Like he just jumps out of the water, has like a knee up. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, that was the.
I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ! That's like a fucking kung fu movie or some shit.
Yeah,
like, wow,
yeah.
like,
Well,
that's
definitely. So yeah, and exactly, because I didn't know that when I was watching. I read about him later about he's this Hong Kong cinema guy. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that just he putting his little
that one reaction was so great,
on it, and yeah, though that was the Jason dream sequence. Yeah, maybe probably my only, well, maybe not my only, but my biggest complaint about the movie, which it's so minuscule otherwise, but it could be a little excusable, but it still kind of got me unsettled, was that young Jason yelled for help. And to my recollection, that is the only time that character said any words in the entire franchise.
Wait a minute. You're right. Well, you're talking about when he's running away, right? From the kids?
Well, he's running away, and then they put him in the water, and when he comes back up, he yells. I think he only says it like twice, no more than 3 for sure. But shit. Yeah, otherwise, I mean, and here I was thinking about it when, watching Jason, and I'm like, he doesn't grunt, he doesn't roar, or it's just absolute silence always. And in prior films, when you see even Boy Jason did not speak at all. So that was, I'm pretty sure. I mean, and hopefully, viewers, please get us down in the comments if I'm incorrect, or if I am correct and you want to verify what I said. I think that's the only time Jason spoke in the franchise.
You know what, Mark? I think you just created a trivia question.
Yeah.
I think, I'm being for real. I think that's a fucking trivia question. Like, when's the only time you ever heard Jason speak? And no one would ever be able to say it. Nobody will ever be able to answer that.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. That's nuts.
And this is before the reboot, where I think they showed a little bit more of little Jason in the reboot, but I don't think he spoke then either.
Yeah, he didn't speak either. Yeah, he didn't speak in that one either. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and up until this point, we saw a lot more of little Jason than we ever did. I don't know how much further that we saw little Jason in the first Friday, but I don't. If you haven't seen the first Friday, you got to see it without spoilers. If you haven't already been spoiled on it, because when you watch that movie for the first time, which I did, there were no sequels. I saw that movie as is, not knowing any spoilers, even though I had read about it in Fangoria magazine, and it's amazing.
And
it's a good movie with this. What's that?
Oh, you say yeah, it's a good movie with the spoilers. Yeah. And what I was going to say though is about Jason. I haven't seen too many Friday 13 movies. I mean, I've seen a few, but not to the extent where I'm like so in awe of the franchise. I am in awe of the character, just the franchise itself. I'm just about. Again, I'm more of like a new gen person. So like the reboot, I was all for, but we'll get to that at some other point. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But in terms of the look of Jason, what did you think in this movie? As someone you've seen all the Friday 13 movies, I'm assuming, right?
Okay, this is where it's going to be controversial.
Shit.
Because yeah. Okay, and the thing is, we haven't really been talking about the developmental hell of this movie. And to be quite honest, I mean, people, if you really want to know about how it took 10 years for this movie, for Freddy and Jason to finally come together, there are so many videos on YouTube. And there's a whole book called Slash of the Titans. It's like, and I'm not being paid by the publisher of this company. It's just I just found out about this book today, and I'm not being paid by the YouTube channel Mini Comedic Arts that it comes out of Australia, has a really good video about Freddy versus Jason and mentions this book. Or maybe it was another, but either way, so a lot can be said about that. But one thing about it was the a fan favorite actor that played Jason named Kane Hodder. All right. And Kane Hodder was, and this is the thing, it's like I'm really losing a lot of fan points because I'm trying to remember the exact movies he played Jason in. Because I mean, I used to know this, but I haven't really watched the movies in quite a while. But yeah, I think he was in 6 and 7. He was not 8, but either way, he really wanted to be in this one. And they chose, I think it was Ronnie Yu that decided that he wanted an actor that was going to look very imposing over Robert Englund. And I believe Robert Englund, I mean, okay, now, I don't know, a lot of people are really fucking tall these days, it seems. But I mean, he's like 5'8", 5'9", okay? So, so it's going to take a big guy. I mean, yeah, that's not 6 feet. But that's tall for being in the 5 foot range, So yeah, and honestly, I mean, I thought this was one of the scariest Jasons. I love the design. I love the knife they chose. I mean, it was the biggest knife he ever had, and it was just really cool. It was really and just Jason's bigness. I mean, I don't think he was any bigger in any of the movies. I mean, yeah, he just really looked he was scarier, more imposing in this movie, and that was the reason why Kane Hodder wasn't cast. Now Kane Hodder, I mean, it's not like he's got he's a bigger built than Robert Englund, but for some reason they went with this guy who had played, I believe he'd done stunts as Jason and did some other scenes as Jason in prior films. But yeah, but I don't know. But either way, viewers, if you want to hate me, go ahead down in the comments, man. I mean, hey, I'd rather have people giving me shitty comments than saying nothing at all. Oh, sure, I like being loved, but loved and hated are way better than neutral. So if you hate me for saying that it really worked and this guy was a good choice, my sympathies to Kane Hodder. He's a really awesome actor. I think he did Leatherface. So yeah, cool guy and everything, but I don't know, maybe some other movie, hopefully. But yeah, but the Jason, I was really impressed with this one.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like this movie was fucking amazing because of the way Jason was in this movie. I like, you know what I like as well. I like and it kind of had this in a reboot movie as well, where you had like little strings of his hair still, hair left still. So I enjoyed that
Mhm.
part. Like it's just the small details like that. Him walking around with the dead body, like the slow mo with the mist at Crystal Lake, and Jason just
Oh,
walking out of the water because it happens
oh yeah,
twice in this movie. It happens twice in this movie, where Jason's walking out of the water with the dead chick, and like I think he's what hold her by her hair, and just
yeah,
walking out with that, and then in the other hand he's got the machete,
yeah. That is
and
probably
then
my
obviously at the
favorite
very end,
scene. Like as a scene,
yes,
instead of just a little part.
yes,
Yeah, again, another just another great aspect of the visuals in this film. I mean, what a way to capture that. Because I don't recall seeing anything like that in any of the prior Friday the 13th films.
no, not at all, not at all.
I mean, the visuals were pretty impressive in the reboot. Again, hate me in the comments below. But they had been done, and it was this movie that did it.
So
So this movie set a new bar.
facts, facts. And apparently a bar that could never be fucking hit. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody could ever come close because I mean, to be honest, we've never gotten a movie like Freddy versus Jason. After this is better to me. This is way better than Godzilla versus Kong. Way better than Godzilla versus Kong. Uh, uh, but again, I'm just a nobody.
I really want to like Godzilla versus Kong more than I did, but if we want to talk about bars here, and I often do, the bar was set at Skull Island, man. I mean, god
Oh
damn.
yeah,
you
Skull Island
know,
was so.
yeah, and that's hard to
But
top, and it hasn't been. Yeah.
I mean, not to touch too much on a franchise, but I will say this: my two favorites between Godzilla versus Kong and then all those movies is Godzilla. I think 2014. I still hold just a little bit under Skull Island. Skull Island passes that movie just by a little bit. But yeah, I love both of those movies. But King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong just was not it for me, man. Just was not it for me. I wanted Godzilla versus Kong to be. I really did, but it did not, man. That movie was.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Well, I mean, how do you top the Helican? Okay, we're talking about another franchise, but yeah,
no, you're fine. You're fine. That's what we do here on Half Ass, man. But yeah, like so my favorite scene in this movie was definitely I'd have to say that fight scene, man. Like the second fight scene, that last basically like the last part of that movie. But I like the ending as well. I think that a nice cap on it was I don't know if you really want to call it a cliffhanger or if you just want to call it like the ending or whatever you want to do or whatever you want to call it. But where Jason walk out of the water, he's got Freddy's head, but Freddy winks at the camera before the credits hit. But another thing, and I texted you guys yesterday too in the group chat and told you guys after watching that movie, the soundtrack of this movie was just, I don't know what it is, but whenever I hear like that kind of rock music, it just takes me back to like a whole different like fucking like reality at that point. Like that hits nostalgia like a motherfucker, dude. Like I'm sitting, I'm like, Jesus Christ, this really was 2003. Like, oh my god, like.
Oh yeah,
it sounded just like the times.
Because the metal, because like metal was supposed to be this signature music of A Nightmare on Elm Street, but and hate me in the comments below, but that was hair metal, and this was now of course I could go on about metal being suited to horror films, but yeah, definitely seemed more suited to a horror film than like very high-pitched voices and Hairspray VO5 stuff. Not that stuff doesn't have its charm, but
Yeah.
I mean, maybe back then it seemed more suited, but yeah. But the one thing that I don't know how much you looked into that, but the one thing that I did learn was that all the songs in this movie were previously unreleased. I don't know how many were actually made for the movie, but as far as like, it wasn't like all these songs were taken from other records that had already been released. They were all like they're previously unreleased before the film was made.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's actually that's a pretty good statistic, because that doesn't happen often.
No,
often.
Yeah, and I'm always more impressed when a movie can do that. Probably my favorite original motion picture soundtrack has got to be Curtis Mayfield's Superfly, because all those songs were made for the movie specifically, and and they had Curtis Mayfield. I mean, this was a guy, he's an artist, and I mean, he really, he didn't phone it in at all. It's an amazing soundtrack. So yeah, I always love it when that. Now, like I said, maybe this soundtrack wasn't quite the same way as Superfly, where they were specifically made for this movie. But either way, like I said, they got these songs before. I don't know where they were released otherwise. Maybe they were on upcoming albums later or something like that. But either way, never heard before for this movie. That's pretty cool. I think that's really cool.
Facts. Look, it's better than hearing Creed at the end of Halloween H2O. And trust me, I love Creed, but Creed is not meant for a Halloween movie. I can tell you that. Right. I can tell you that one. I was so disappointed when I heard Creed at the end of Halloween H2O. I was like, what the fuck? Oh my God, man. But anyways, so so those were our favorite parts of the movie. But now let's get to a part where, well, Mark, I hate to do this part for this movie, because I really like this movie. Got to do it. If there's a scene or anything in this movie that you would fix or do away with, what would it be?
Okay, well, I mentioned I mentioned before, but there might be a few things aside from that. But I don't know how I felt about it, so I don't know if I would change it or not. But like Jason speaking, it's sort of like I just felt a little unsettled that was breached, especially since not too long before that scene, I was thinking to myself how impressed I was with how silent Jason is and how he has to be depicted, how the actor has to act him with nothing, no vocalization at all. And of course, in that scene, it was a younger Jason. I mean, and I don't know how much of this goes to the continuity. I mean, this movie is supposed to actually be taking place of the events after Freddy's dead and Jason goes to hell. So, mind you, Jason had become supernatural, I believe, in in number 6, he was resurrected by lightning. So I guess that was probably pretty supernatural. But
what about
in
Jason
part
X?
7,
so they didn't count Jason X with this one, right?
Well, I mean, if you want to count Jason X as canon or continuity, Jason X takes place after this, because it's in a distant future. It's like hundreds of years into the future.
Oh, yeah.
So that was, and then of course this film was supposed to be, at the time the film was, released. Yeah. So if you wanted to do that. So we got this supernatural Jason, and maybe there's something about his silence to that. So maybe the kid vocalizing in the flashback scenes, it makes a little sense. But him actually speaking words, I found that a little unsettling. And there were a few things about the dialogue that I wasn't sure about. But like I said, I think it was in scenes where you couldn't tell what was dream. I think it was specifically this scene where they were trying to figure out who they were going to sacrifice
Yep.
to Freddy, and they
I
figured out it was
love that.
Laurie. So and it's like, but some of the dialogue that was up until that point where you realize it's a dream, I couldn't figure out how much of that was actually said and how much of it was, like I said, where after Laurie drifted off. So there's a couple of things that were said. I was just like, yeah, this is just, I don't know. I'm not really buying this. And I don't know. I don't have any specific things that they said, but, they're talking about sex. And then Fenderman says, oh, it counts if you pay for it. And just, yeah,
Yeah.
it was just kind
I
of
love that
clunky in
part.
that scene. So, yeah, there was, but I don't know, and that's where there's things in this movie where there's just these little things that that don't ruin the movie for me. Like I said, the Freebird's mouth opening up to get to swallow Freddy Caterpillar. Yeah, you could tell the CGI wasn't really perfect in that, and I agree with you. That's excusable. They were working. I mean, it was a big budget movie, and that was probably the best they could get. And so probably at the time, it was probably a lot better. It probably seemed a lot better given here we are, damn near 20 years later. So yeah, I think the only things I would change about this film would just be tweaks like that.
So, I mean, you guys already know what my tweets were about this movie, which was pretty much the characters in the second half of the movie. I felt like it should have been even it should have been like at minimum, maybe just two of them by the end of that movie. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously it's just two of them by the end, but you know what I mean? Like it should have been a minimum amount of time that you should have the actual like characters on the scene besides Freddy and Jason in the second half of that movie after that first fight.
Mm-hmm.
The better the movie I felt like would have been. But things that I will continue to celebrate about this movie, Freddy. Another thing too, at the beginning of this movie was fucking, to me, I would say almost perfect. Just the way that they did everything. I mean, you talk about where Freddy's pretty much narrating the beginning of this movie, the intro of the movie, and where it pans to his mouth, and you see like just like the visuals of like his mouth and his nastiness, his skin, everything, and his teeth. His teeth were way different in this movie
Oh
than any
yeah.
other movie I've ever seen. The first visual you see of his teeth, it's like wow, like it's completely different than what we've seen in anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's not a complaint or anything. But yeah, very different.
This is definitely my favorite Freddy makeup in this in the franchise so far. Honestly, I don't remember much of the reboot ones, so I'm not going to count that for now because I haven't seen it in so long, and it might be better. I don't remember, So,
We'll
but
get there.
Well, yeah, that's next, right? So I might change my mind, but yeah, as far as Freddy's makeup goes, the best. Um, so I looking into the background of this, apparently the mask that he was wearing, I guess, was really thick, and it was so thick that the scenes with the fire, he actually couldn't feel the heat of the fire, and by the time they had to take it off of parts of it had melted to his face. So
Holy
yeah,
shit!
but either way, yeah, I really liked it. I really liked how there was because in six. Even Wes Craven's New Nightmare, there was something off about it, and this seemed to be like not only just more return to the darker, grittier Freddy of prior films, but an improvement, which it should be because times have things have gotten better. The budget was better, things like this. So there was a lot of things going there where it's like, okay, you got a $30 million budget this time, make it look like it. And I think in a lot of ways it does.
Facts. And again, I'd like both versions of these characters. I fucking loved in this movie. I mean, you talk about the story, and again, I cannot look, in terms of all of the Nightmare, the Nightmare franchise movies, in terms of the story, I'd probably say this has got to be top 3. If we're counting this movie as being a part of that franchise, which I feel like you would have to, I would say this is definitely in top 3 in terms of story. Because, if not my favorite so far, because I gotta say, when you see Monica Keena, what was her name? In the movie, Lori, the maker. So when you see Lori, when she's in that police station, and she like everybody's freaking out, you have not heard Freddy's name in the entire movie, and I love the way they did this part. And you know what? Let me go back and retract. I'll say this is probably my favorite scene of the whole movie, which is crazy because it's like at the beginning of the movie, damn near, but it's after like the first couple killings. But they're in a police station, and then she puts her head down, and she's like, "What was his name?" I thought it was very corny up until this point where she actually says his name, but like the part because we already know that Freddy's trying to get people to remember him. He said, all I need to do is to get them to remember me, which was super, again, story, genius, whoever came up with this fucking, hey, it was worth the 10 years. It was worth the wait. This movie was worth the wait of the 10 years. It was subtle,
that was the explanation for why her dream went south, was because it took her to remember his name.
Yes.
And then boom. But they had established that. But it wasn't wedged in at all. It was such a smooth transition.
Yep. Remember when old dude, you mentioned old dude that went out, that his dad, his head went over to do the best friend of the first guy, of Trey. Remember, he went out to the street because Freddy let him out there, and Freddy tried to kill him, and it went right through him. And then you remember the kid saying, he was like, oh, he's like, I'm still alive or whatever, or I survived or something. He's like something like that. And then Freddy's like, I'm not strong enough yet. And then he puts the knives like this on his shoulder. He's like, I'll let the what do you say? I think he said, I'll let the big man have fun or something like that.
Yeah.
And then that's when Jason, like, dude, the dynamic between Freddy and Jason throughout this movie as well was just so. I'm 100% there for it. Like, nothing felt super corny except for except for the dialogue. The dialogue was the only thing that was somewhat corny. But when it came to Freddy and Jason, I guess Freddy, Jason doesn't talk. Well, obviously, he does. Don't want to offend you, Mark. He does. Jason talks in this movie. But, Freddy does most of the talking. Freddy does 99.9% of the talking between the two. And and so when Freddy's talking in this movie, it's never anything that we have not heard from Freddy. Just like one of the like that they would never be able to do this joke nowadays. Hell no, they would never be able to do it. But when he looks back at Kelly Rowland, he says, "Dark meat," and then he just starts running. Like, dude, I popped for that one. Now it was like that whole movie, and then she's sitting there talking shit on Freddy too. She's talking about his burnt face. She's talking about him being insecure, all this other stuff, right? And then he does this, and then she turns around and Jason's standing right there, and I was like, bro, like just it's crazy. It's like, wow, Freddy didn't want that kill. He's letting Jason, and then they go back and fighting again.
Oh, yeah.
And that's another part. Look, man, my two favorite parts of this movie was the last fight, and where Lori, remembers Freddy's name. I mean, you remember the kid from the psychiatric hospital. I forget the guy's name, but the guy's friend. The other guy who remember, I thought that was a pretty cool dynamic too. Yeah, Mark. Well, yeah, I should remember that. Mark. But yeah, the friend Mark. I felt like he died a little too early. Honestly, I felt like they could have. I mean, obviously we already knew he was going to die, but I felt like they should have kept him alive just a little bit longer, because I hate when they kill the guys that know what's going on too early. I feel like that's now a cliche. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you go back to Urban Legends. You go back to I Know What You Did Last Summer. You go back to Halloween Resurrection. All those movies, the guys that knew what the fuck was going on got killed off early. And it's like, maybe Scream is probably the one movie where it didn't happen. Where they didn't kill off the guy that put all the pieces together, or at least had the best chance of putting all the pieces together. But they killed the Mark. They killed Mark way too early in this movie. I felt like he could have benefited. They all could have benefited from being around him, because him and the dynamic between him and Laurie, they're the only two that knew who Freddy was. They're the only two who had the nightmares at that point, and his backstory was way more. I kind of feel like they should have swapped him and the other boyfriend, and just have him be the boyfriend, because it would have been perfect. It would have been perfect. But that's all I gotta say. But oh, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I just say, just to go back to you. You mentioned when he pointed after Kia was going off on him, and just that little point that he did, I was so impressed with that,
Yep.
And I love seeing it a second time too, because I was like, wow, a day later, seeing it a second time, it still works, and it's like, I don't know, to me, it's like one of the best little gestures that Freddy made in the entire franchise. I mean, there's some trivia for you right there. Like, was that like a one take, one and off, or did they have to do a few just to perfect it? Either way, it came out perfect.
Yeah, because the way he had his mouth open and he just looks, he's like,
yeah.
Like, you can see the way he feels super fucking comfortable with the knives in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's like, Robert Englund is mad fucking like this was his movie. I feel like, I mean, you can probably say Freddy's Dead was probably his movie as well. Maybe New Nightmare, he got to get a little bit of that feel again in the mid 90s. But you're talking about damn near 10 years later, this dude missed. You could tell he missed Freddy. You could tell he missed playing this fucking character, man. But now, Mark, here comes the hard question. All right, not the hard question, but the easy question. I guess in this situation, the easy question. What would you grade this movie, and why?
All right. Well, I knew what I was going to grade this coming in, and after our discussion, sometimes we change our minds, but I don't think I have. I think you and I were on the same page a lot. So I didn't get anything out of this discussion that radically changed my mind about this movie at all. I give it an A. I might have given it an A plus, but I don't know. There's something in me that tells me that there's an A plus somewhere. That the A plus movie has to be made. But I mean, after seeing New Nightmare, which I gave an A, and I still think it deserves it. Yeah, this one, definitely an A. Like, if the A is like 94, 95, 96%, then this is definitely like right on the cusp of an A plus, where New Nightmare was probably right in the middle, like a 95. This was a 96.
Mark, normally I'm right there with you. Normally. But, the simple fact that I watched this movie, and from the beginning, I felt nostalgia. And when the movie ended, I felt nostalgia. Not just nostalgia, man, but the fact that I can watch this movie for the first time as an adult, and I felt like I was still watching a great movie. You had every element in this movie. You had horror, you had action, you had the humor. To me, when you put Freddy on screen in the early 2000s with these characters and this storyline, and Robert Englund showing that he had the itch for it, and then you add in another serial killer, you add another famous slasher in Jason, and you put them two together. And on paper, if you were to tell me all this shit would have happened on paper, I wouldn't have believed it. I would have said, man, it might be a good movie, whatever. But the way this movie was executed, the way that the story was executed, fam, Mark, I got to give this movie an A+.
Wow.
I got to give it an A+. And let me tell you something, too. Here's a little kicker for you guys. And Mark, you'll know where I'm headed here in a second. The first movie of the Nightmare franchise the death of Freddy left us scratching our heads. The second movie, The Power of Love, or The Kiss of Love, whatever the fuck we called it, left me scratching my head even more. And we continue to do that. It seemed like a constant theme throughout the Nightmare franchise. This movie did not hold back. This movie did something even more appreciative of long-time Nightmare movie fans. They killed Freddy legit. In the most legit way, to say, hey, look, we're not going to say, oh, Freddy's trapped in this room of fire or something like that, or Fred burned again. No. Jason is going to take Freddy's arm and the knives and put them through his heart or through his chest. And Freddy is going to fall in the water as Jason will. And Freddy will die. And at the very end of the movie, so that we can assure you, hey, there was a clear winner. Even though both of them died, there was a clear winner. And Jason's walking out of that water with Freddy's head. And how do you make that even better? Because you could have just ended it there. You could have just showed Jason having that epic walk with the mist and the water, or the dude, whatever you want to call it, walking out, and it's so fucking badass and awesome. And you could have just cut the screen off there. But you know what they did? They took it an extra step, and they said, you know what? Freddy's gonna wink. Because that, to me, this is horror movie 101. You want to know how to make a really great horror movie? You watch this fucking movie.
Now, yeah, I agree. Movie. And what a wink! What a wink it was!
What a wink! Because they could have easily said, you know what, we can just have Freddy and Jason fight and have really cool fight scenes, and that's it. It's a really cool action movie with horror slasher icons. No. They still made this a horror movie. From the very first scene, where you see where they're in Laurie's house, and old dude is in the bed, and he gets stabbed, gets slashed up by Jason, and Jason goes the extra step and folds the bed like, perfect. Now again, like you said, Mark, there may be a better version of this movie, maybe, or maybe better parts of the movie, maybe. But to me, this movie is I wouldn't say it's the greatest. One of the greatest horror movies of all time or anything like that, but just might be. Might be. Any last thoughts on Freddy versus Jason, Mark?
Yeah, well, I would say that's the things that earned the A for me. I thought there was a good balance between Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. In that Jason had some really good moments, and Freddy did. That was very balanced. And unfortunately, a lot of times it can happen is sometimes a movie won't live up to its promise, because I've seen movies before, and maybe we already touched on one, like Kong versus Godzilla versus Kong, where it's right there in the title, so if you're coming to this movie expecting a battle, you get it. You definitely get it. And so there's kind of an irony there, because this is the first time you saw Jason and Freddy, because I mentioned Minty Comedic Arts earlier. I watched that video, and he described it as a love letter to the fans, and so it's kind of funny how he described it in a way like this is the movie that they did, like going, okay, this is what the fans expect, and I think they delivered. And so it's just funny that you get that as your first impression, Yeah. And so here it is. It's got a really high bar. And that may have affected your viewings in this series that we've done. But yeah, altogether, that's what I really like. The balance, the visuals, great choice of director, great casting. amazing special effects makeup. The only thing like I said, just the CGI, but all around, really, pretty solid.
That's mega facts. That's mega facts. Yeah, and I don't. I'm not trying to shit on the cast or anything because I love that cast. There's some pretty notable names in there that some people might see in that cast that are still relevant to this day. But it's just the dialogue. Whoever created the dialogue, whoever wrote the script and wrote the terrible fucking dialogue, at least when it came to them communicating with each other, like the humans communicating with each other, I thought was very, very stupid. But we are talking about 2003, so a lot of the dialogue in the early 2000s of any movie.
This could have been otherwise perfect because I definitely think the visuals and the action made up for the dialogue in a lot of ways. But had the dialogue been done better, 100%, like just perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I could stop watching movies right then and there, because the perfect movie had been made, at least the perfect horror film. But 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 either way, just all good things all around.
Facts. Very rare you're gonna get an A+ out of me when it comes to a horror movie. So I enjoy you guys know I really, really enjoy this movie a lot, and I'm glad to see Mark does too, because to me, I think this is a universe still, like the majority of people that have seen this movie actually like it a lot. I think critically in Rotten Tomatoes, it probably got bad reviews, but they shit on horror genre. That's another whole rabbit hole too. Rotten Tomatoes and horror, and actually film critics in general in horror movies is just a whole nother fucking rabbit hole that we'll dive into at some other point. But guys, we just reviewed Freddy vs. Jason, so make sure if you're in here, hit that like and that subscribe, all that good shit. But do not fret, do not worry, guys. We are coming back here in a few minutes. So make sure you guys head over to the stay on this channel, on this YouTube channel, but head over to the other stream, the other live stream that we have set for 9:30. We're about to head over there, and pretty much what we're gonna be talking about tonight is fucking Marvel, man. Tonight is Marvel night, apparently, because we didn't have an episode last week. Took a little break. I got busy at work, so you know how it is. Real life kicks in the ass, and you just got to get back up. But do not fret, do not worry. We're gonna be back. We're gonna be talking about some Marvel shit. So we'll be on for about an hour or so, just chilling, kicking it, talking about pretty much everything Marvel that has happened in the past 6 days, if not longer. So head over there. We're gonna be over there in about 10 minutes, and we will see you guys over there. Mark, where can people find you?
All right. Check me out at the Walter Paisley Cafe.com. I'm gearing up for Halloween here. I've been watching a lot of horror films. I know I've been pretty spotty in the past, and I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to pick up any, a consistency. But I got some plans coming ahead. I'm looking at some Fulci films. I want to do some Fulci here. I want to review Zombie and the Gates of Hell trilogy. Also, I have slightly changed my address, my Spadao address at Instagram. It's now spadao.art. And I just changed it a little. Been watching a lot of videos, trying to get more views, trying to get more followers, things like this. It's kind of rough. I'm very niche. There's just I could be controversial. I've already had a couple of problems with Redbubble. So it's like I'd like more followers, but I can understand why maybe I don't. Okay, but either way, Redbubble, just hit me up at Spadao, SCHPIDAUU.art, and then of course you could just look for me at Facebook and Twitter under those names as well. And, also as Mark Plaid, my personal accounts, where you can find more reasons to hate me because I have a lot of opinions that are unpopular.
But yeah, I'm gonna put all of the links in the description as well. Mark, make sure you send me the new Spadal link too, so I can put that in there. The Spadal.art, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, make sure you send me that one as well. But yeah, they will be in the description by the end of the night. So, or at least by tomorrow, if you guys are watching the next day. So make sure you guys be on the lookout for that stuff. I got some other stuff coming to the channel, but again, we got a live to do here, ladies and gentlemen, here in a few minutes. So head over there. We're gonna be over there. We're gonna be talking a whole bunch of shit. So it's gonna be fun. So I am me, and this is Mark Plaid. This is the half-assed film panel. And ladies and gentlemen, we will be BRB.